Jamel Morris, famously known as YNW Melly, is a 24-year-old rapper whose career has been overshadowed by legal troubles, largely tied to alleged gang activities. While he rose to fame only a few years ago, his journey has been marred by serious accusations. In early 2019, he faced first-degree murder charges after the deaths of two close associates, making his case far more severe than the typical legal woes of other troubled rappers. Melly's trial, which began in June 2023, has unveiled shocking details. Despite his 2019 arrest, it took over 4 years to build the case against him. To better understand the trial's developments, let's break it down week by week to explore the court's revelations and how they might impact Melly's defense, especially with the death penalty at stake. In late October 2018, Melly was with his friends YNW Portland, YNW Sack Chaser, and YNW Juvie outside a recording studio. However, tragedy struck during the early hours of October 26th. Portland arrived at Memorial Hospital Miramar with Sack Chaser and Juvie, both bleeding profusely, but Melly was absent. Despite Portland's claim that the two men were victims of a drive-by shooting, both were pronounced dead upon arrival due to multiple gunshot wounds. Melly expressed his grief online, portraying the deaths as a result of gang violence. For months, it seemed like he had lost two close friends to street crimes. But in February 2019, forensic evidence took the case in a shocking direction. Law enforcement revealed that forensic analysis indicated Melly had allegedly shot and killed Sack Chaser and Juvie. Furthermore, it was claimed that Melly and Portland had staged the crime scene to mimic a drive-by shooting. Portland was arrested in Texas and extradited to Florida, while Melly turned himself in following the allegations. Melly maintained his innocence, posting on Instagram, "A couple months ago, I lost my two brothers to violence, and now the system wants to find justice. Unfortunately, a lot of rumors and lies are spreading," being said. "But no worries. God is with me and my brother," Melly stated, referring to Portland in his message. With the trial officially starting on June 12th, YNW Melly's lawyer launched into a powerful opening statement. The defense emphasized the prosecution's lack of concrete evidence directly linking Melly to the crime. This strategy aimed to cast doubt on the allegations, focusing on weaknesses in the prosecution's case.
After 4 years of investigation, the state comes and says, "Hey, he killed two of his friends, his best friends." And you're wondering why, and their answer is, "I don't know." That's the first indication that they're just guessing and don't know what they're talking. And that, ladies and gentlemen, by itself is reasonable.
The first day of the trial didn't bring anything groundbreaking, except for one significant claim. The prosecution focused on giving the jury context about the case while summarizing the evidence they had to prove Melly's guilt. They referred to surveillance footage showing all 4 men in Portland's car during the alleged drive-by. They also presented phone data, blood splatter analysis, and a bullet casing indicating the victims were shot from inside the car. However, they lacked the murder weapon, making it impossible to link the casing directly to Melly, for now. One notable claim was that Melly had contacted his friend, Fredo Bang, real name Frederick Givens, just minutes after Portland arrived at the hospital with the bodies. The prosecution explained, "You'll find that while Mr. Demons, Melly, is on the side of the road at 4:42 a.m., he sends a drop pin, a digital location marker, to Frederick Givens. About 11 minutes later, another drop pin shows Melly moving only slightly." The trial's first few days were uneventful, but the final day of the first week, June 16th, was explosive, potentially uncovering crucial information about Melly's whereabouts when Portland brought the victims to the hospital. Felicia Holmes, the mother of Melly's ex-girlfriend, took the stand, and her testimony sparked chaos. According to 2018 court records, Holmes had previously stated Melly FaceTimed his ex-girlfriend on the night of the shooting, telling her his friends were killed in a drive-by. She also said it seemed like Melly was hiding, waiting for someone to pick him up. This detail aligns with the prosecution's claim that Melly called Fredo for a pickup since Portland would not have been able to leave the hospital so soon after arriving with the bodies. However, Holmes proved to be an uncooperative witness. Her testimony was repeatedly interrupted, and she was declared hostile by the prosecution. Holmes claimed she couldn't recall her 2018 statement saying, "That was 4 years ago. I've had so much trauma since then." She also denied sending an Instagram message to Melly's team threatening to snitch because he hadn't fulfilled financial promises to her. Additionally, she stated she felt intimidated by the prosecution. This combination of denials and claims complicated the trial, further muddying the waters for both sides.
Do you have any written threats from me?
He intimidated me this whole time.
After this, Holmes criticized the state, recounting her 2022 arrest for missing multiple court appearances. She claimed she never received a subpoena, stating, "The state basically has me on a monitor. I have to go to my job like this. People think I'm a criminal. The state has ruined my life." Melly's lawyer filed a motion for a mistrial, arguing that Holmes's testimony had tainted the jury. While the motion was considered, the decision was deferred to the following week. The very suggestion of a mistrial introduced significant implications for the case. The director of the University of Miami School of Law's Innocence Clinic explained that if incidents like this continue, the defense could argue, "Here we go again. The jury was tainted back in June, and now they're tainted again. There's no way we can have a fair trial." If Melly were convicted and appealed, the Florida Supreme Court would review all trial transcripts, including the motion for mistrial. If a judge believed a mistrial should have been granted, the entire case could restart from scratch. In the second week of the trial, on June 20th, Broward Circuit Judge Joseph Murphy denied the mistrial motion, allowing the case to continue, though he criticized the prosecution's approach. On June 21st, the prosecution brought in a mobile phone data expert as an expert witness. Assistant District Attorney Christine Bradley presented evidence attempting to disprove the drive-by shooting theory. While the defense argued there was no certainty Melly had his phone with him, surveillance footage of the 4 men leaving the recording studio clearly showed him using a phone. This confirmed he had it when they entered the car. Further evidence included text messages sent to Melly's mother, Jamie Demons King. These messages referenced Melly's ex-girlfriend, Felicia Holmes's daughter, proving Melly was the sender. The content of the messages raised eyebrows. In a conversation from late August 2018, Demons King and Melly discussed issues between him and Sack Chaser. The prosecution read the messages in court, with King referring to Sack Chaser as Melly's best friend, followed by Melly requesting a gun, a Glock 40 or 19. This certainly didn't work in Melly's favor, as a weapons expert had earlier testified on June 14th that a .40 caliber weapon was used to kill Juvie and Sack Chaser. Ada Bradley highlighted that after leaving the studio, tracking data placed all 4 men at 3 locations: Miramar, Pembroke Road, and Pines Boulevard. Portland claimed the drive-by occurred at Miramar Parkway, but detectives found no evidence there. Instead, they discovered something at Pembroke Road, where Bradley argued the drive-by was staged. Things worsened for Melly when phone data revealed he was with the victims just 15 minutes before Portland arrived at the hospital with their bodies in a Jeep Compass. The defense had consistently argued that it made no sense for Melly to kill 2 friends he grew up with, especially without a clear motive. In the first week, Melly's lawyer emphasized this point, saying, "Do you know what requires motive? A young man deciding to kill 2 of his best friends he grew up with, hung out with, lived with, and was helping launch their careers. There's no reason, and if there's no reason, it doesn't make sense." However, on June 22nd, the prosecution tried to counter this by bringing in Detective Danny Polo, who testified about gang affiliations. Polo, whose face was covered due to death threats from unrelated cases, claimed Melly was a G-Shine member, an offshoot of the Bloods. He suggested the murders were tied to gang activity and presented hundreds of photos linking Melly to other Bloods. Despite this, the prosecution struggled to establish a clear motive. While not legally required, providing a motive could significantly bolster their case. DNA testing further complicated the trial. Initially, Melly's DNA was not found on any evidence inside the car. However, a second test revealed his prints on the passenger side door handle, even though video footage showed him entering the car from the driver's side rear seat. This discrepancy could be critical if the prosecution proves the shooting occurred from the back seat. But the defense argued this new evidence was flawed. The second test occurred years after the crime, and a crime scene investigator admitted she might not have changed gloves between handling items, raising contamination risks. Adding to the controversy, the prosecution failed to inform the defense about the second test and its results. This upset the judge, who accused the state of a discovery violation and implied they were playing dirty.
I think that's a discovery violation. I'm finding it to be a discovery violation. I think the only way it can be cured is he's not going to testify about this second procedure that happened. That's not coming up. That's new discovery. The defense doesn't have an opportunity to depose the witness. The defense doesn't have an opportunity to do X, Y, and Z. And that's just not the way it should be. It shouldn't be done by surprise.
The third week of the trial began with a continued focus on Detective Polo's testimony. On June 26th, the prosecution doubled down on connecting Melly to gang activity, aiming to reinforce their argument that the case was gang-related. Polo's testimony wrapped up the following day, leaving the court with a detailed narrative of Melly's alleged gang ties. Next, the prosecution brought in a medical expert who conducted autopsies on Juvie and Sack Chaser. The doctor presented hundreds of photos of the victims as evidence to support their findings. Based on the autopsy reports, the doctor concluded that Sack Chaser had been shot multiple times, both before and after he died. This gruesome detail added another layer of complexity to the case, potentially underscoring the brutality of the murders.
The individual you did the autopsy of and the individual that your fellow medical examiner did, correct?
I can tell you the first shot. I don't know the order of the second and third.
Okay. And the first shot on both of them were the fatal shots.
Because they are already deceased when the other ones are inflicted.
The testimony from the medical examiner and Sergeant Christopher Williams was crucial to the prosecution's case. The medical examiner's findings supported the idea that Sack Chaser and Juvie were killed before the drive-by shooting was staged. While the doctor couldn't determine the exact shooting distance, the autopsy revealed that Juvie was shot at close range, and the positioning of the wounds aligned with the placement of the men in the car. Notably, one of the bullet wounds in Juvie's left cheek was fatal, with additional wounds occurring post-mortem, similar to Sack Chaser's injuries. However, the lack of clothing on Juvie when brought in for the autopsy raised concerns. Sergeant Williams' expert testimony was pivotal in solidifying the prosecution's argument. He concluded that the victims were shot from inside the vehicle, not in a drive-by shooting. Williams confirmed that one person with one gun was responsible for the deaths, and that the shooting had occurred from a stationary position. He ruled out Portland as the shooter due to the seating arrangement, stating it would have been impossible for him to shoot Juvie, who was in the back seat. On the 11th day, Leandra Phillips, Juvie's mother, identified her son in video footage, and photos and videos were entered into evidence. Despite the significance of the testimony, the court recessed for the 4th of July holiday, with proceedings to resume on July 10th. The upcoming jury site visit to the forensic garage, where the Jeep Compass used in the murder of Sack Chaser and Juvie is stored, is expected to be a significant moment in the trial. Security measures will be in place, and the jury will only be observing the vehicle without further discussion. This visit will be pivotal in helping the jury form their conclusions about the events. YNW Melly's behavior during the trial has drawn attention and sparked reactions. Early on, he was seen praying, mumbling to himself, and blowing kisses to the gallery, which was noticed by Juvie's mother, Leandra Phillips. She criticized his actions, stating that it seemed like he lacked remorse and found it inappropriate considering the gravity of the trial. In addition to this, Melly was seen laughing and joking with his lawyer, and in one instance, he became agitated while repeating words to someone in the gallery. These actions led to mixed reactions, with some believing he was indifferent to the trial, while others pointed out that his behavior might be a result of his long time in prison. Despite the strange behavior, Melly was also seen wiping away tears when footage of his late friends was played in court. This emotional response contradicts some of his other actions and adds complexity to the view of his character. The testimonies from the medical examiners and Sergeant Williams have supported law enforcement's claims that Melly was responsible for the murders of Sack Chaser and Juvie. The death penalty is on the table, but due to Governor Ron DeSantis' non-unanimous death penalty ruling, only 8 out of the 12 jurors need to recommend the death penalty for it to be imposed. If convicted, Melly could be one of the first to face this penalty under the new law. Key details that have emerged so far include phone data showing that all 4 men were together just 15 minutes before the hospital trip, and other crucial pieces of evidence that have painted a complex picture of the case. The prosecution has made significant claims about YNW Melly's involvement in the murder of Sack Chaser and Juvie, suggesting he may have reached out to Fredo Bang for help after the killings. However, Felicia Holmes's testimony has provided a potential lifeline for Melly, allowing his legal team to file for a mistrial. If Melly is convicted and appeals, the Florida Supreme Court could grant the mistrial, potentially giving him another chance to prove his innocence. Further complicating matters, Melly's history of conflict with Sack Chaser and his request for a .40 caliber gun, the same type used in the murders, adds more suspicion. While the prosecution initially struggled to establish a clear motive, using gang-related allegations and Detective Polo's testimony, they failed to provide conclusive evidence. Despite this, the testimonies from the medical examiners and Sergeant Williams align with the forensic evidence gathered back in 2019. One major obstacle remains. Law enforcement has yet to locate the murder weapon, weakening the prosecution's case. There are also significant events outside the courtroom that could influence the trial. One is the unusual fact that in April 2020, while Melly was denied house arrest after contracting COVID-19, Portland, who faced accessory and murder charges, was granted the same request the following month. This raised questions about the differential treatment, with Portland being granted more leniency than Melly. Reports in 2023 suggested that Portland told law enforcement he was only the driver, further distancing himself from the murders. Portland is set to go on trial in October 2024, which could offer more details and strengthen the prosecution's case against Melly. Testimonies have already indicated that only one shooter, likely Melly, was involved in the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie. The outcome of Portland's trial could potentially provide further insight into the case and its implications for Melly. The dynamic between YNW Melly and Portland continues to evolve, especially considering the possibility that Melly's defense could shift blame onto Portland, or that Portland could potentially strike a deal that implicates Melly. Given the lengths these men have gone to, including staging a drive-by shooting to cover up their crimes, it's clear that the fight for freedom could lead to unexpected twists. There's also a real chance that Melly's resentment toward Portland may have grown over the years, especially due to the difficult prison conditions Melly has faced, including threats to his life from corrections officers and having his privileges taken away. Melly's Instagram posts highlight his struggles, revealing threats from officers and fears of being beaten by staff, which paints a picture of the harsh reality he's endured in custody. Meanwhile, Portland has had an easier time, especially after being granted house arrest while Melly remained incarcerated. This contrast in their experiences could lead to increased tension between the two, particularly as their trials unfold. In addition to these personal dynamics, the wrongful death suit filed by the families of Sack Chaser and Juvie in October 2020 adds a layer of complexity to the case. The lawsuit alleges a dispute over money as the motive for the murders. The 4 men reportedly had a significant amount of money coming in, but disagreements about how it should be distributed led to tension. The families claim that Melly and Sack Chaser were expected to receive $200,000 each from a $500,000 deal, while Juvie would have received $100,000. This dispute, particularly over the potential sale of the YNW brand for marketing and licensing, could have contributed to the tragic events, with Juvie's father expressing firm belief that Melly was responsible for his son's death. These new revelations, along with the legal and personal tensions between Melly and Portland, will likely play a crucial role in how the trial unfolds and may offer a glimpse into the motive behind the murders.
The day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son's death on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation, when I finally talked to him in Portland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They never came to town, never came to my son's funeral.
If the claims about a financial dispute over the YNW brand are true, it indeed shifts the narrative surrounding the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie. They were not just close friends, but also business partners, and the involvement of a large sum of money introduces a potential motive for the killings. The tension over how the YNW brand's future would be handled, especially the disagreement over the distribution of earnings, could have been the catalyst for the tragic events, casting a darker light on Melly's actions. However, as of now, the wrongful death suit is separate from the ongoing trial, and the prosecution is still working to piece together the events leading up to the killings. Expert testimonies and evidence have painted a picture of Melly as a calculated killer, possibly driven by financial greed. The fact that he referred to Juvie as his day one and shared dreams with him complicates the emotional side of the case. Could Melly's ambition have outpaced his loyalty to his friends, to the point where he saw their deaths as necessary for his success? As the trial continues, more details about Melly's relationship with Sack Chaser and Juvie and his potential motives are likely to surface. The complexity of the case, with the personal and financial stakes involved, makes it unclear how things will ultimately unfold, especially with Melly's defense still at play. It remains to be seen how the jury will interpret the evidence and testimonies as the trial moves forward.